Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're at. We are holding over here to our Moshiach Matters class at either 134 or 135. Parshas Toldos, as we were learning, we're holding by the Pasuk Perek Chavhei, Pasuk Lamed. Nope. Yeah. We're learning about Yaakov and Esav and the sale of the firstborn. So it says in the pasuk, and we spoke about this in last class already. I just want to continue on the theme. Let's read the pasuk. Vayemer Esav al Yaakov. Esav says to Yaakov, "Haliteni no, stuff me, if I can find a good word for it. Haliteni no, stuff me up. Mina adam azeh, with this from this red stuff." Okay, he wants, because Yaakov was in the midst of cooking up lentils, which are red, and he said, "Give me that red stuff, because I'm exhausted." And that's for that reason he's called Edom. So last week, not in the last week, but in the last class we had a long discussion from the Abarbanel on this idea of Esav being Edom, Edom being Rome, according to our sages' tradition. Even though initially we discussed the Abarbanel, how Edom was a land bordering the land of Israel, but later it was at some point that one of the sons of Eliphaz made his way, was captured by Joseph, and then made his way through Africa as he escaped Egypt, and he made his way through Africa down to Italy, and he became a great ruler in Italy, and eventually other Edomites came, and that was the seeds of the great Roman Empire. That's what we discussed in our earlier class, and the idea that Rome translates later into the Christian West, and that's the Galus of Edom. Okay? I'd like to share with you today a fascinating passage of the Talmud about Edom. So the Talmud says like this in Masechtas Megillah. This is the top passage of the Gemara, Masechtas Megillah. V'amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Tavav Amid Aleph. V'amar Rabbi Yitzchak says, Ma'ay dichsiv, what is it that it says in the Pasuk? Al titein Hashem ma'avaye Rasha. Hashem, please, don't give the wicked his desire. It's a Pasuk in Tehillim. King David is saying that please don't give the wicked man his desire. Zamamai, his nose ring. Al tafek, do not release it. Do not remove his nose ring, yarumu sela, so that he will not behold the majesty of Hashem. So what does that mean? So Rabbi Yitzchak says that this verse, even though it's in the book of Tehillim, it really was said, King David HaMelech is quoting Yaakov Avinu. This is a verse that these are the words of Yaakov. Amar Yaakov lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yaakov says to Hashem, Ribono shel olam, Master of the world, Al titein le'esav harasha taivas liboy. Do not give Esav the desires of his heart. Zamamai al tafek, his ring, do not remove. What does that mean? Zugermamya shel Edom. This is a part of the land of Edom called Germamya. Gimel Reish Mem Mem Yud Aleph, which is a certain part of the land of Edom, in which that's very Edom in all of his intensity. If these guys, if this part of Edom would have permission, would be able to go out, machrivim kol ha'olam kulo, they would destroy the entire world. And that's why Yaakov was praying, do not give Esav, do not give the wicked man his desire, means do not let this wickedness of Esav, do not allow this wickedness of Esav to emerge, to come out. It's very, 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 very intense, and it's very powerful. Good morning. Do not allow them out. And that's also the meaning of, we're learning about Esav called Edom. Right? Because Yaakov was cooking up a red dish, and Esav says, stuff me with that red stuff. So the Talmud says that there is a pasuk that says, don't give the wishes of the wicked. Don't remove his nose ring. So the Talmud says it's referring to a place called Germamya of Edom. Because if these people, these descendants of Edom, would go out, they would destroy the world. Good. Then the Talmud continues. The Omer Rabbi Chama Bar Chanina. And Rabbi Chama Bar Chanina says, Tlas meya katira taga ika begermamya shel Edom. 300 princes with crowns live in the Germamya of Edom. Utlas meya v'shitin v'chamisha merzavni ika beroimi. And then there are 365. And then there are 365 chieftains in Rome. And therefore what? These 300 princes with crowns from Germamya of Edom go out and clash with the 365 chieftains of Rome. And the Romans kill from the Germanians of Edom one of them every day. And they're so busy to appoint a new king. In other words, because they're so busy appointing a new king every day, so they don't have the ability to go out and destroy the world. It's obviously a cryptic passage of the Talmud. So first of all, who is this Germamya of Edom? Now the Gra, the Vilna Gaon, says that you have to make an edit in the Talmud, that Germamya is supposed to be not two mems, Germamya, but we should read it Germanya, mem nun. So the Vilna Gaon says that this is referring to Germania of the descendants of Edom. Rabbi Yaakov Emden, the great sages of about 300 years ago, Talmudist, says that it is referring to Germany, a descendant of Edom. And that if they would go out, they would destroy the world. So Yaakov, our grandfather, great-grandfather Yaakov, talking about Jacob, Yaakov Avinu, was already praying for what he foresaw. The power of Germany, and you saw how Germany instigated both world wars, and the second one with the Holocaust and all that. So Yaakov is already davening, don't let them out. Keep the muzzle on. Keep the muzzle on. Okay, so if we say it's the Germans, it's interesting. The word Germania fits very well that this is of German. Now, this is related to this pasuk because the verse is speaking about that Esav is called red. He's called the red one. Why is he called the red one? Because his food, he said, stuff me with that red stuff. Now it's interesting, even though he was born red, he said the pasuk describes when Esav was born, he was born all red. Yet, the pasuk doesn't say they called him Edom until he acted upon his redness by asking for that red dish. So here's another medrash I'd like to share with you before we get into this. The medrash says, hold it. The medrash says about Edom. The medrash says like this: Tafshilo Edom, his dish is red, like he says, give me to eat from this red stuff. His land is red. The color of his soil is red. Shenemar, as it says, Artsa Seir Sedei Edom. It says that Yaakov sent messengers to the land of Seir, the field of Edom, which means the red field. So there's a redness to that land. His mighty men are red. as it says, Giborov Madom, his mighty men are red, rednecks. Livusheim Edom, their garments are red. Shenemar, it says, Anshe Chayil, their army, Mitulaim, are dressed in Terlas. Terlas is red. Upareya Memenu Edom, the red one is going, when God is going to come on payback day, God is going to be red. As the pasuk says, Doidi tzach v'adam, my beloved is all red when he goes out to war against Edom. And what will God be wearing at that time? Bilavush Edom, in a red garment. So the Midrash says that Hashem is going to get even with Edom in a red garment. As it says, when God comes back from exile, it says, the verse says that we will say to Hashem, Madua Adam levushecha, why are your garments red? Okay? Here we have a statement about Germany, or about Germania of Edom, which it speaks about. Interesting. It says that there's two factions. There are the 300 men that wear crowns. They're in Germania of Edom. They wage war against the 365 chieftains of Rome as they battle every day, and they're kept at bay because they're kind of fighting with each other. And that's what King David also says when he says, don't remove his nose ring, which means do not allow. How does God not remove his nose ring, which means, or nose ring over here we're talking about is a ring that is put on an animal that doesn't allow the bull to go out and be, do it. So you're kind of restraining that animal. So the restraint of Edom seems from the Gemara, this is what the Marsha says, is that they fight against each other. If not for that, and they're busy appointing a king, because we said before there are 365 chiefs. If each day they lose, and why do they have 365? Because they have a different ruler every day. If they lose one, they have to replace him. So again, this must have a mystical meaning as well. But what's really going on over here? So the great Rabbi Yehuda Loewy, the famous Maharal of Prague, has a very interesting explanation on this idea. And he says that Esav is rooted in a very, in Daniel it speaks about the four beasts. Before it speaks about the coming of Moshiach, are the four beasts that rule the world, which represent the four powers that subjugate the Jewish people in the four exiles. And the last one is Edom, a ferocious beast. So he describes, and he says, the Kabbalists say, Balei Emes, the Kabbalists say that the power of the fourth beast comes from the sun. And who's the fourth beast? Edom, Esav, the descendants of Esav. They're the fourth power in the world. And the sun is called the great, it says this week in the Parshas Bereshis, it says that Hashem created the luminaries in the sky. And it calls one luminary the large luminary, and the other luminary is called the small luminary. A large one and the small one. The moon is the small one, the sun is the large one. So whoever is plugged into the sun is plugged into the large luminary, and therefore has incredible power. That's what Maral says. And that's why Esav is called red, because the Talmud says in Baba Basra that the sun is red. It looks yellow to us, but the sun essentially is red. That's why when you see the sun setting and the sun rising, it comes up as red. That's the true color of the sun. From here, it's a yellow globe. And therefore, and it's actually a pasuk. It's a pasuk in Shoftim. It says, "B'terem tovoi hacharsa." Before the sun comes up, it's called it charsa. Now, charsa means earthenware, clay. And I guess the earthenware, the clay that they talk about, what's called cheres, is a type of red soil. Like you see pots that are made out of a reddish tinge. So that reddish tinge is the cheres, and the sun is called cheres because the sun is red. And the other luminary, so the sun is Edom, it's red. The other luminary in the sky is the moon. And it's called in Hebrew, what do we call the moon? We call it Levana. Levana because it's white. So you have these two powers, red and white. Esav is rooted in the redness of the sun. Now he says an amazing thing. He says, because the sun, if you can look into the creation, and you're looking for the thing that has the most power, that is within our world, the sun is definitely the most powerful entity. That's why we know how many of the ancient civilizations worshiped the sun. Even Avram thought that the sun, before he came to this conclusion that there must be a being that we can't see, that's the one creator that created everything, Avram also worshipped the sun. Because the sun, since the sun has such a great, it's the most powerful entity that there is in the world, and everything is dependent on the sun for life. That's why the sun is called the king. It really is a power of kingship. And whoever derives, because we know that various different nations and various different people take their energies, everything comes from God, of course, but as Hashem channels his energies through the various constellations, those that are plugged into the sun have a special, unique power of kingship, of sovereignty. And he says all kings, all rulers are connected to the sun in some way, because that's the power of kingship. Since Esav, his mazel, his power, is the sun, and again, that's why Esav is called red, because he's rooted in the sun. And he says he counts to the sun. He sets his calendar, which you see clearly is the what is it called? The Gregorian calendar, which is a solar calendar. That means that you're counting time to the sun. That's that power. And he says, therefore, Esav has unbelievable might, incredible power. But here's the amazing thing. That power remains in potential and is never actualized. So Esav has been making trouble in the world since way back then. It's the Roman power. They were incredibly strong, but this was with their two hands tied behind their back. It's while Esav remained muzzled, so says the Maral. Esav has that nose ring that's like an animal that's not allowed out. God keeps him muzzled. Because had that power come out, and that's what the Gemara means, had that power of Germania, whoever the Germania is, whether it's the Germans or whatever it is, had that power been allowed to come out in its thing, it would be the most destructive power in the world. But thank God that it is held at bay. Just an interesting idea. And this is Esav's, Edom's power in the world. Now, is this power only a negative power? That's the question. But when we quoted the Medrash before, it says that in the end, God will take revenge of Edom through Hashem being red and dressed in red garments. So what does that mean, that Hashem is dressed in red garments? So this is not from the Maral, but from the Sefer Beis Yaakov, and this idea is mentioned many places, that there is at least a certain part of Esav's power that is converted to goodness. There's a certain part of it that has to be subjugated and maybe even broken and destroyed. But Esav is the son of Yitzchak. Esav is at his core. There is a root of holiness there, and that needs to be sublimated. That redness, and it's fixed, and then it becomes an ally to holiness. Does that mean that there is a certain redness? Now, Rabbi Mendel Kessin, if you listen to him, has been talking so much about the side of Edom that is fixed, and that's the United States of America. And so it's interesting. I mean, I've mentioned this so many times with the current state of affairs, that is so supportive, that the administration today is so supportive of Israel and is red and exhibits so many of Esav's qualities, or we might call bruteness, and yet is turning out to be, at least in terms of the Jewish people in Israel, the biggest support we've ever had. And in the United States, you have a lot of red land. You have Utah, so red. And it's a positive redness in the sense of, in terms it's turning out, it's turning out to being the biggest support for the Jewish people in Israel. And that's part of the Messianic transformation. Now, I have to realize one thing, and I mentioned this many times, anything Messianic is going to have the biggest opposition possible. And that's why you've never seen such crazy opposition now. Of course, you can blame it on this and blame it on that, and disregard for this and disregard for that. And again, in order to be able to be the one who facilitates powerful change and fighting against powerful forces that were working the other way, against holiness and against God for so many decades, especially in a very insidious way, you need to have a bulldozer. So the fact that it comes around in a form of someone that's very bulldozery and therefore just lacking finesse and lacking any kind of eloquence, that's Esav. He's a brute. But the redness of Esav, that is salvageable. That's my take on it, on current events. The rest I leave for everybody else to finish interpreting the way you think way it fits and comes from your understanding. In any case, but let's bring this into a spiritual state. What is this transformation of Esav for the good, the redness of Esav? Not in the physical, but in the spiritual. We know that Yetzer Hara is red. Yetzer Hara primarily resides in our blood, in the left side of the heart. It's red. And we know that when Moshiach will come, we will not do away with the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is very, very important, because the Yetzer Hara is the one that actually introduces intensity into our service. Without the evil inclination, without the Yetzer Hara, everything would be mellow, everything would be calm, everything would be soft. So even our connection to God would be very, very mellow, very soft, very... And that's the meaning that the very fact that the Yetzer Hara comes and creates obstacles, that's what Yetzer Hara does. He doesn't leave us alone for a minute. He creates so many obstacles. It's the redness, it's the passions, the desires, the unholy distractions that are constantly facing us. But it's these very things that cause us to be distant from God, which create that intense desire to reconnect and to reattach. So holiness and Hashem doesn't become boring. There's always that desire of the distance that came about as a result of us being pulled down again by the distractions or the temptations of the world. And that's the meaning that Esav's garment is red, and this later becomes God's garment of the redemption. That redness is sublimated. So it says when Mashiach will come, and the Yetzer Hara will be finally contained, it says that to the tzaddikim, to the righteous people, it will appear like a mountain. In other words, the simple meaning, it means that it will be so that they won't believe how they were ever able to conquer their evil inclination. But there's a deeper meaning, and that is that the Yetzer Hara will be a full-blown power of passion and fire towards holiness. And that's the redness. We want the redness. So we want to incorporate Esav's redness in Yaakov's service. And that's the Adam, that's what we're talking about, the Giyul of the redemption coming with God being dressed in a red garment. It's the redemption, it's the sublimation of the red, whether it's Esav in a spiritual form, which is the Yetzer Hara, which I had just spoken about, or Esav as he materializes in a material form, the forces of Edom in the world, the forces of Rome and Western civilization and the like. But in the end, at least certain part of it, as we spoke earlier, becomes involved in the Messianic process. and helping out in bringing about the restoration of Eretz Yisrael, the building of the Beis HaMikdash, and so on and so forth. That's what it is. So now we continue. The pasuk says in the next verse, Vayomer Yaakov, Yaakov says, Michra kayoim, sell to me like the day as b'charas chali. Please sell me your firstborn rights. So Yaakov seizes the moment. Esav is very hungry. And you know when Esav is hungry, there's nothing else in his mind but his food. It seems like Yaakov is getting Esav at a very weak point. He's like taking advantage of his weakness. And he asks him to sell him his firstborn rights. And Esav goes ahead with it. And he sells it for a plate of soup. And then later he regrets it. And in a sense, you got to wonder why Yaakov is being so unfair to his brother. Right? I mean, he's taking advantage. You know your brother's got a weakness. So catch him at that moment and take away from him something so precious. So we have a question. And we see that Esav he can't forgive him. And later when Yaakov takes the blessings as well, Esav says, he cheated me twice. He took my blessings and he took my firstborn. And when Yitzchak hears that Yaakov already took the blessing, Yitzchak didn't know about this. When Yitzchak hears that Yaakov had actually acquired already the firstborn rights, then he calms down, because first he's actually shooken up by the fact that Yaakov deceived and took the blessings. He said, your brother came with cunning and took it away from you. But when he hears from him that he took the blessing, he says, oh, let him also, he says, oh, good, then let him be blessed. So he acknowledges. So it's okay. So we see an interesting thing. We see that the blessings and the firstborn are deeply, deeply unified, deeply connected. Then we need to understand something else. What is the words when he says to him, when Yaakov is telling him, he tells him one word in the pasuk that seems like completely not understandable. He says to him, sell me like the day. Michra kayom, sell me like the day, your bechora. What is this emphasis? Sell it to me like the day. What does he mean like the day? Like which day? What does it mean, sell it to me like the day? One explanation is, I don't want you going back on it. Just like the day passes and you can never bring back the day. Time passes. Once the day leaves, as much as you want to bring back that day, you can't have that day again. So in this once he says, it should be a final sale. I don't want to hear later you coming back and telling me that, you didn't mean it, this and that. It should be. Rashi says it means as the clarity of the day. Just like day is so clear, everybody knows it's day when it's day, so too, it's a clear sale. But there must be some deeper meaning in this. Sell it to me like the day. So here are some interesting ideas. We know, first of all, and we discussed this already at earlier classes, that Yaakov and Esav were already at each other's throats when they were still in the womb. It says Rivka had horrible tension going on in her womb. The two of them were fighting. She had the worst the worst pregnancy ever to be recorded. And it's because of the scuffle that was going on between the two. And the sages tell us that the scuffle was about the inheritance of the worlds, of all of existence. So they knew there are two worlds. There's the current world and the future world. So it says already that Yaakov said to his little twin brother, already in the womb, there are two worlds. One of them you eat and drink and have a good time. The other one is a more spiritual world. You know what? If you're okay with it, I'll go with the spiritual and you take the physical. And Esav agreed to it. They came to terms on it. If that was their agreement and if that was their arrangement, that was their arrangement from the beginning. Now Yaakov wants something from Esav. What does he want from him? He says, give me your firstborn. And like the day. So there's a very gem of a pirush over here that I really think is really special. This explanation of what does he mean by it. Life in this world is pretty tough and harsh. If you're very wealthy and you have life and everything, okay, it's also not easy, but But there's one day of the week that we live in tranquility and joy and happiness and pleasure and in delight, and that is Shabbos. So the question is, if Yaakov gave this world to Esav, how is it that we have Shabbos? How does Yaakov live in a world of pleasure? This is a world of hardship. Yaakov chose it. Yaakov says, give me a hard life in this world. I want a tough world. And I want to work for the world to come. But then we have a Shabbos, and Shabbos was given to us as a day of tainog, a day of pleasure. Where do we get a day of pleasure in this world when this world is supposed to be a life of toil? For Yaakov, not for Esav, but for Yaakov. And the answer is, that's what Yaakov was purchasing now from Esav. He said, give me your mechorascha, sell me your bechora, sell me your firstborn, referring to Shabbos. The reason why Shabbos is called the firstborn, sell me the firstborn, because what's the firstborn's power? He gets double. He gets a double portion. Shabbos is special. The doubleness of Shabbos is that Shabbos is spiritually rich. It's a very, very spiritual, but it also physically is a day of rest and a day of pleasure for body and soul. That's why Shabbos is considered a double portion. It's a double day. It's a day full of world to come light, but it's experienced in this world. It's like we say, Maayon olam haba. It's a piece of the world to come while we're still in this world. And Yaakov doesn't have it on his own because he doesn't have this world. So he has to go to his brother Esav and say, sell me a little piece of this world that you have, which is the seventh day, give it to me. That's why he says to Michra Kayom, like the day. He's talking about the one day, the day of Shabbos. And he says a little remez. The word Kayom is Rosh Tevis. The acronym of the word Kayom is Kulam Yizbu'u v'yisangu mituvecha. We say it on Shabbos. We say Yisbuchu b'malchuscha. We should rejoice in your kingship. Shomrei Shabbos. All those who keep Shabbos. V'kora oneg. All those who call forth a day of pleasure and a day of delight. And we continue. We say Uba Shvi. And on the seventh day, Ratzisa ba. You desire this day. Kulam. All of them, meaning all beings. Yizbu will be satiated, the yisangu, and they will delight mituvecha from your goodness. So if you take the first four letters of that phrase, it's kayom, like the day. Kulam chaf yizbu yud v'yisangu mituvecha. Yaakov is asking for Esav for that kayom, for that kulam yizbu. Esav says, I don't need it. Especially since the law is that the Gentile that keeps Shabbos, it's not meant for the Gentile. So Esav gave it to Yaakov. That's an interesting pirush in the Michra Kayom that Yaakov was after in his sale. But here's another, there's something very deep over here. The word Bechora, first of all, is the same letters as the word, Bechora means firstborn. It's the same letters as the word Beracha, blessing. The blessing is one with the Bechora. We'll soon see why. The main blessing is the world to come. So Yaakov was actually saying to Esau, okay, so you're taking this world, I'm having the world to come. That's why the word the Bechora is also gematria, the word Bechora. Before I said Bechora is the same letters as Bracha, but that's Bechora without a Vav. When you add the Vav in the word Bechora, which is firstborn, the gematria of that is Eitz HaChaim, the tree of life. So we know that the world that we're in right now is under the domain of the Eitz HaDas, Tov Ra. That's why it's all a mixture. But the world to come is a world of purity, and there's no Ra anymore, there's no evil in the world. And therefore it's the Eitz HaChaim. So when Yaakov was asking Esau for that sale, for the firstborn, he said, relinquish your hold, whatever hold you have in that realm, that's for me. And they settled on it. That's also the reason why Yaakov was in the midst of cooking lentils. Lentils are round, and it's a dish that you cook. It's a dish that you cook when you're, when chas v'shalom, when someone is sitting shiva. They give them the lentils. I mean, at least it used to be that way. They used to give them the lentils because it's round. And the idea is to emphasize the idea that the world is a cycle. But what does it mean the world's a cycle? People comment, the cycle doesn't mean like people interpret it. People are born and people die. No, that's only half a circle. The cycle is people are born and they die and they live again. That's the full cycle. And that's what Yaakov was talking about. Yaakov was saying, I'm into the lentils. I'm into the second round, the second hakafa, the second round. And that's where the Eitz HaChaim will prevail. The tree of life will prevail. So let's come around. And the other thing about the lentils is that they don't have a mouth. Whatever that means. Maybe you'll explain that to me. Rashi says they don't have a mouth, a lentil. So we'll have to examine a lentil and understand what that means. And that's why we give it to mourners, because a mourner is not allowed to speak until you speak to them first. You can't open up a conversation. The deeper meaning is the mourner doesn't have a mouth to complain to God. Ultimate complaint. Why? Because if death would be final, then you would have complaints. Why do you snuff and end life? But since death is not final, it's only a temporary pause until the person comes back again. That's why ultimately no creature has a complaint against God, and that's the reason why he doesn't have a mouth, because you don't have an ultimate argument, because Hashem says, don't worry, they're coming back. Be'ezus Hashem very soon. So Yaakov is indicating very much a belief in a future life and in a greater life. And that's the Bechorah that he was asking for, which is Eitz HaChaim, Gematria Eitz HaChaim. Yeah. But now, I'd like to take this, what's this idea of Bechorah being so powerful? So here's a mind-blowing idea from the Tzemach Tzedek. So the Tzemach Tzedek says that because he asked a question, the third Chabad Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek. He asked the question, why is Yaakov making such a big deal about getting the Bechorah, firstborn? We know it's because the firstborn would officiate, the one who would be in charge, the service to God, the priestlyhood, the service to work in the temple is given to the firstborn. But then it was taken away to the firstborn because we sinned by the golden calf, by the egel. It was taken away. So the question is, why is Yaakov risking his life to get the firstborn for something that's not even going to last? The avodah was taken away from the Bechoros, was given to the Kohanim. And Yaakov is putting so much into this. I mean, really, he didn't spend too much. It was actually quite a good buy. All he gave was a plate of lentil soup. But that's the question. Why did he? Obviously, if the Torah is saying that Yaakov, you know what he did give up? He acted. But my question, he took advantage of a weak moment. Why is he doing that? That's unbefitting for Yaakov. Obviously, the prize was very, very important. But what's the importance of it? It didn't even last. And if you're going to say it was, but for his generation it was important, we don't find anywhere that Yitzchak, father, is inviting his children to partake in offering sacrifices to God, and he calls Yaakov to be the one who does it. If we would find in Yitzchak's lifetime that Yitzchak says, okay, today we're making a offering. Oh, who's the firstborn? Asa. Oh, no, you sold it? Let's give it to Yaakov. But it doesn't happen. So in a sense, if you look at the whole procedure, what did Yaakov get by the firstborn? It never, in the future, it was taken away. It was given to the Kohanim. And in his time, we don't find ever that there was a service being done with the firstborn. And one more question. Later, when it comes to the blessings, we find that there was one blessing, and the blessing was supposed to go to Esav, and Yaakov took it away. And here's the question. Yaakov takes away the blessing. And Esav is like going crazy. And he says, Father, do you have a blessing for me? Something. His father says, what can I do? Since when is there only one blessing? I mean, take a look at Yaakov. He blesses all of his sons. Moshe Rabbeinu, we just came out, he blessed all the tribes. Here it seems like there's only one blessing. And there's a tug of war on the blessing. And then Yitzchak says to Esav, your brother came and he stole your blessing. As if there's only one blessing to be had. So he explains it like this, related to this week's Parsha, Parshas Bereshis. When God created, this is so powerful. When God created the first human being, Adam, what does it say? He said, let us make man in our image. The depth of that means that Hashem invested everything in the human being. Everything. That means the human being, in a sense, is a spark of God. And because he has everything. And therefore, everything in the human experience resembles the godly. And by Hashem above, Hashem's firstborn is super, 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 super powerful above everything else. What does that mean? Not in the physical. What does it mean, God's firstborn? Keser, crown, versus all the other spheros is called, in Kabbalah, it's called the firstborn. And we know the crown, Keser, is Ein Sof, more powerful than all the attributes together. Chachma, Bina, all of them, they're considered absolutely nothing compared to Keser. We also know he says Das, further down the chain. In the Zohar, it refers to the attribute of Das as the firstborn son compared to all the other 6 spheros, Chesed, Gevurah, Teferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. And then Malchus is the girl. The boys are Chesed. But Das is called the Bechor. And we know Das is way more powerful than the other ones. So he says, since that's the way it is above, since Hashem created Adam Arishon to be in his image, the same thing would happen in the human offspring. That the firstborn has spiritual qualities and power and abilities like incomparably higher and greater to all of his siblings. But guess what? This power and this amazing strength was lost immediately. Where was it lost? When Adam and Chava sinned and ate from the tree of knowledge, man suddenly was, Adam's similarity to God was suddenly tremendously compromised, and boom, he fell. Especially since Bechorah, the law of Bechorah is, it has to be firstborn to the mother. Petarechem, firstborn of the mother. Chava was deeply affected by the snake. As the sages say, that the snake had relations with her. It doesn't mean physically. It means that he projected his venom onto Chava. That's what it says, Bana. And he polluted her. In that sense, they lost that power. And that's why he says in the early generations, you don't find anything special about the firstborn. As a matter of fact, from the sons of Adam, you had Cain and Hevel and Shes. Shes ends up being the third one, ends up being the tzaddik and the foundation of humanity for the future. It's not Cain who's the oldest. Hevel is killed, Cain. And throughout, Noach isn't necessarily the firstborn son, and so on. You don't find the power to be in the firstborn. He says, until we rectify the sin of the Eitz Hadas. And then the human being was restored to that state of Adam. Who rectified the sin of the Eitz Hadas? Sarah Imenu. Sarah did a tikkun on the Chet of the Eitz Hadas and Chava, and she purged herself from the effects of Chava. So now the human being was restored again to that powerful, potent state that the Eibishter had made him, and therefore, and who was their son that was born? Who's the first human that was where did we have a factory reset? To Adam Arishon? Yitzchak. Because Yitzchak is the son of Sarah, the first one. Also he says it's Avram's son. The Avos in general repaired the Chet of the Eitz Hadas, but Avram after his bris milah. So even though number one, Yishmael is not a son of Sarah, he's a son of Hagar. Number two, he was born to Avram before his covenant, before his bris. Yitzchak is the son of Avram after his bris. So by Yitzchak, we're back to Nasa Adam, let us create man. Who is the first human being who is similar to Adam Arishon is Yitzchak. Therefore, Yitzchak's children, Yitzchak's Bechar, is like back to be that potent being resembling Keser, which is Ein Sof and all that power. The second one is like a midget compared to a giant. So Yaakov, in terms of his soul power, compared to his brother Esav, is nothing. It's an amazing thought. Esav had incredible power. And Yaakov knew that. And that's why later we're going to see, and we're going to see Dafka Yitzchak. It's only it didn't carry through to anybody else but to Yitzchak. It's only by Yitzchak that the firstborn is like the most potent one. It's only by Yitzchak that the firstborn is the most potent one. Why is it that it's only by Yitzchak? Why Dafka by Yitzchak? So in a minute. And later we find out, I'll give you an example. By Ephraim and Menashe. Menashe is the older son, and yet Ephraim gets the bigger blessing. We all know the story how Yaakov crossed his hands. How does that work? So give me just one moment. This will impact the blessing as well. Why? What's the idea of a blessing? That Tzemach Tzedek says something so amazing. He says, what's the idea of a blessing? The idea of a blessing is I'm not giving you something you don't have. The concept of a blessing is unleashing your potential. If you don't have it in your source, I can't give it to you. Sometimes people have tremendous spiritual potential, but that potential is clogged, it's not flowing down, it's not materialized, not actualizing. When you get a blessing from someone, you're getting that person has the ability to actualize other people's potentials. That's why we find that Yaakov, and we gave over this idea many times. That's why when Yosef says to Yaakov, Ephraim, Menashe is the older one, why don't you give him your right hand, the stronger blessing? Yaakov says the younger one will be greater. So the question is, why will the younger one be greater? Because you're giving the younger one the bigger blessing. Give the older one the bigger blessing, and the older one will be greater. And the answer is no. Yaakov looked into their potentials, into their soul source, and he saw that Ephraim was sourced higher than Menashe. And therefore he said the younger one has much greater power, and therefore I'm going to give my stronger blessing to channel down that power. So if that's the case, if a blessing is to bring down, since Esav, who was the firstborn of Yitzchak, his power is rooted in Keser, in the Ein Sof power. Yaakov knows, and therefore, when Yitzchak was only going to bless, and maybe he was going to bless Yaakov as well, but what he was going to do at that moment was he's going to actualize the power of the firstborn. He's going to turn the switch on. It was always there in Esav, but it wasn't switched on. The blessing of Yitzchak was going to download that powerful energy. It would have been horrible if Esav would have gotten it. It was a miracle that Yaakov took it from him. But now we understand why Yaakov did what he did, and well, let's understand an amazing thing. He says the main reason over here is because in order to have all the revelations that are going to be in the world when Moshiach will come, all the infinite light that's going to be in the world, when Moshiach will come, there's going to be the revelation of God's crown. For that, you need the person who's going to do the work to be connected and plugged into that place. That's the power of the Bechorah. That's why the service, the avoda in the Beis HaMikdash is done by the Bechorim. It was meant to be done by the Bechor. Because just like by God, the Bechor is much higher than all the others, and therefore the Bechor can pump from levels that no one else can pump from. So therefore down here as well. So Yaakov knew that Esav would have that potential. So Yaakov asked, give me the Bechorah. And he took it from him. Therefore later, Yitzchak found out that Yaakov got the Bechorah. He had no problem with the blessing, because the blessing was meant for the Bechorah. And if it was switched to Yaakov, then Yaakov is the Bechorah. Now, an interesting thing, when the Jews sinned in the golden calf, I'm just going to conclude with this. When the Jews sinned in the golden calf, they lost it again. Because again, they went back to the pre-Eitz Hadas state. They lost the power of Bechorah. And therefore, who became the ones who channel God's light into the world? The Kohanim. And he says an interesting, just one last idea, which is really fascinating. What is a greater priestlyhood, when it's done by the Bechorim or when it's done by the Kohanim? It's way greater when it's done by the Bechorim. It's just that we don't have any more the power of Bechor these days, because Bechor is only from someone who is in the image of God, can create a Bechor. This is the way it works. Only someone who's similar to above can produce the power of Bechor. So Sarah, being that she rectified it, she brought Yitzchak to be born in the image of Hashem. So Yitzchak's Bechor had that power. But once the Jews sinned with the golden calf, they messed it up again. They fell from being in the image of Hashem. Their Bechorim are not plugged in anymore. They're not plugged in anymore. So we have to go to the second best. Second best is Kohanim. What's the difference between Kohanim and Bechorim? And this is just awesome. Kohanim lineage goes by your father. Bechorim lineage goes by the mother. Why? Spiritually, you know, the Kohanim's energy is from Chesed. Chesed derives its main power from Chachma. Chachma is called father. Chesed takes its energy from the father. So therefore, Kohanim, their power is Chachma. So Kohanim bring down a lot of light, a lot of energy, a lot of powerful godliness, but only from Chachma, not from Keser. And Chachma to Keser is nothing. It's the best we can do today's days, but here's the second thing. Bechorim, they're rooted in Keser. How? Because they have to go through their mother. Their mother is Malchus. Malchus is really rooted in Keser, higher than all the... Malchus is the lowest, but she's rooted in Keter in the highest. So to get to Keser, to be a Bechor, which is the power of Keser, you need to go through Malchus, dafka, through the mother. But since it was Chava, who's the mother, who had messed up, so later this whole link, the maternal link is not working now that well, in that sense, to connect us to Keser. Until when? When Moshiach will come, in the days of the future when Moshiach will come. And I don't know if it means, I don't want to say when Moshiach will come, because I'm a Kohen, so we want to hold on to the service. And we do know that in a certain extent we say that when Moshiach will come, the Kohanim will work. But there will definitely be a time, la'asid love, maybe in the 7th millennium, I don't know when. There will definitely come a time when the avoda will go back to Bechorim. And it will be a much higher service than ever before. Because it means the Bechorim that will be born Bechorim after Mashiach comes, when the human race is restored back to be in the image of God, then they will have their firstborn, and their firstborn will have spiritual quality coming from Keser. And that's why it's only by Yitzchak. Because we learn, we spoke about this many times, Yitzchak is the most futuristic of our fathers. Yitzchak means laughter. It's the laughter of the future, and so on and so forth. Avram and Yaakov are related more to Zman Hazeh, to these days. It says when Mashiach will come, we will say to Yitzchak, you are our father. So in the days of Mashiach, in the day of Yitzchak's time, that's why by Yosef was not a futuristic person. He was a big tzaddik, but he didn't belong to the days of Mashiach. His children did not have the power that Menashe was the Bechor. Menashe was the Bechor, but the Bechor didn't have any potency. That's what we're talking about. Question is, does the Bechor have the potent power of firstborn of Bechor? No. Today's days, no. In the future world, 3 times in history, when God created Adam, but he lost it even before he had his first child. It resurfaced by Yitzchak, but only, and in a sense, it remained in the world to a certain degree until the sin of the golden calf. Once we had the sin of the golden calf, we disconnected from that Bechorah power. And instead it was given to those who can channel energy from the second next best place, from Chachma, but not from Keser. And that's the Kohan. And that's why it goes through the father. When is it going to be restored back to its ultimate power? Is when the woman is rectified. And when is the woman rectified? When Moshiach comes. That's the rectification of the woman. And she will go back to her source. Malchus will rise to Keser. And when Malchus will rise to Keser, she will then have the ability to give birth to firstborn that is on that level of firstborn. And that relates to Yitzchak's. That's why by Yitzchak, who was futuristic, his son had that power. And that's why Yaakov had to take it. And we don't find ever in the Torah a struggle for Bechorah, only at this junction in history. Because it was only at this moment when we had this potent Bechorah in the world. Maybe this will also explain, go back to what we said in the Maral, that Esav is plugged into the sun. It could be that Esav, even after the Bechorah was taken away from him, since he was once the Bechor, that's why his kingship is so powerful in the world. That we spoke earlier, that if he wouldn't be restrained, he would destroy the world. But it was taken away from him. But even the fact that he once had it gives him such power of Bechorah. Okay, everyone. Bezrat Hashem. We will continue next week, Thursday. You'll join us for another dose of Moshiach Matters. Be well. Second, let me...